Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. I am your host, Chase Merrell, and we are all about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be. If you want to help us continue to make an impact with this podcast week in and week out, consider joining our new Patreon community. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can be a part of helping us get the message and mission of the podcast out to more people more effectively. This is a way that we can come together as a community, and you'll get access to behind the scenes stuff, additional resources and content, and so much more for just as little as $5 a month. You can head over to chasemerrell.com and click Patreon to jump in and get started. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Well, here we go. Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. Today, I have my friend Gary Dunahoo with me. Gary, man, thanks for being here. I'm pumped to get to sit down and have this conversation over the virtual space today, share it with people. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. When you asked me, I thought this is going to be fun. Look forward to it. I love what you're doing.
Yeah. So the project we've been in is 52 project, 52 people who have made an impact on my life that I want to share with the world. And you're one of those people. And the honor for me to get to sit down knowing where you are in the season, what you have on your plate with a lot of things going on, a lot of people that you're helping and impacting. It means a lot for the time that you've made today. And what I'll probably do just to jump in, because there's going to be people that listen to this that know exactly who you are and are listening because of that, because they're excited to hear what you have to say. And then there's going to be people that have no clue who you are. So would you just take a moment and just a brief introduction, like a snapshot, like who is Gary Dunahoo, and for those that maybe not know you, what could you share in that little snapshot for them?
Absolutely. Well, hi to the ones that know me, and hello to those that don't. Right? Yeah, I was raised in a pastor's home, raised in church culture in rural Arkansas. Ended up graduating high school, went out to California, and a lot of different things happened there.
Sure.
Met Tami on March 13th at 515 Roberts Lane, Bakersfield, California, 9:45 a.m. Right?
Ooh, you got it.
And met my bride, right? And it was really, I think, connecting with Tami just did so much in my life for us to have a partnership and really journey together in our marriage and our relationship. But I have been a pastor. That's who I am. I'm a shepherd. I love J.R. Woodward's explanation of apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. He said the apostle is the dream awakener. They awaken the dream of God in the hearts of others. The prophet, it reveals the heart of God to others. The evangelist attaches your story to the story of God. But shepherd, that's me. Soul healer. That has just been my focus. And by the way, teacher is light giver, for those who would want me to finish that statement. But I just really feel like that's been a really important thing. And when I was just a kid, one of the first verses of scripture that ever came to me was Matthew 5:16. And I sometimes tease about, I quoted in the King James, because it's let your light so shine before men that they may see my good works, but they glorify God from what I do well. That has never been a pressure for me. It's always been a commissioning. It's always been a motivator to, like, what I do well. Yeah. This is when I pastored. I love to do that. But with that said, I have had a heart to be back in the marketplace and get in the marketplace and influence people for Christ and be a pastor out there. So I ended up going and getting a PhD in human development. Took a little while to get that, but that's qualified me for some work.
Doctor.
And so now I'm not
Gary.
Pastoring.
Dr.
Yeah, right.
Dunahoo.
It is Dr. Dunahoo, right?
Let's go.
Yeah, no, it's still funny to hear that, because I right back there, I'm keeping it right behind me, my diploma, so I keep it in my mind.
Yeah.
But that commissioning to really let the light of God, what I received from the Lord, let that shine in the hearts and the lives of others as I coach. Because now I'm doing executive coaching, so I work with teams. I've worked with Department of Homeland Security. I have worked with all kinds of businesses, a lot of individuals, coach a lot for UCLA, Anderson School. So it's just getting to meet people all over the world. And so this season of my life, I'm really getting just to be there with people. Yeah. And when I've been evaluated, I get real high marks in coaching presence. It's pastoring.
Yeah. Yes.
It's pastoring.
Yes.
right? Pastoring in the marketplace. So it's connecting with people, hearing their story, and being there with them and seeing them go forward.
Yeah.
So that's quick. That's a quick snapshot.
Yeah, no, it's so good, and I'm going to jump in more to specifically what you said right there at the end, that presence, that presentation or coaching presence, because that's exactly what was the bridge that impacted me as I was introduced to you, and there was a subsequent impact from days and weeks that followed. But before jumping in, just one more piece that I think is really, it's been really cool for me to see from afar, because I'm not up close and personal in relationship with you guys on the day to day, but for you and your wife Tami, who have been such a instrumental part of our denomination, Foursquare. I'm pastor of Foursquare Church. For those that are part of our church and know, and that's been new word to me over the last 5-6 years. I've been a part of Assemblies of God for 20 years before that. But I came into this space and was trying to get to know, like, who is everybody, like what is this compared to what I'm used to, and pretty quickly realized that the two of you were got a little light thing here. Two of you were pretty instrumental in a part of the leadership of what God had been doing for a long time, pastoring at local church and so many other layers of leadership. And the partnership side was something that stood out. Right. Where I've had a few conversations on this podcast project with couples or people that represent what I'm talking about, of men and women in ministry or in leadership, that there's a genuine and pure partnership, that they both walk securely in who God called them to be. And it doesn't come at the expense of the other person's call or assignment or responsibility or opportunity.
Well said.
And I've just been so encouraged, and I just want to acknowledge that going into the conversation that's going to be primarily with you and about you, but that you've been this example for me from afar, even over the last 5 or 6 years, that has been like, man, honor, champion, all these things that I'm like, I don't see it very often in a lot of spaces, especially I think and I'm not putting you in the older generation by any means, so please be careful.
Hey, go for it, dude. Look at this.
No, but by the way, speaking of that, you're looking great, man. I don't know if you're on some kind of like health workout thing too, but I can see you're looking fresh and healthy. Not that you haven't been, but it stands out.
Well, that'll come out later in the podcast.
Okay, cool.
So we're
cool,
good.
Sure. Just the way that you've loved and honored her, and not just it's not just the public honor and love. You could tell, like, man, it happens behind the scenes and on the platform, right? Like, because you can see through all that when a husband or a spouse is just like, hey, but it's not really there. It's there for you guys, and it's evident, and it's mutual back to you. I don't see it as much in the older generation when it comes to the partnership side, as much as I'm seeing it a little bit more in the younger generation side, because I think just culturally and generationally, it's become a little bit more embraced and walked out. But you've been one of those examples, and the two of you are just a powerhouse couple, man, who, I mean, the gates of hell shudder when I think about the two of you and the impact that you've had and still have and have yet to make in the world around you. So just want to honor her and the two of you in that, because it takes two to do that together well. And you guys, your lives in marriage really exudes that consistently and faithfully. So want to acknowledge that, because you also have two doctors in the house. I mean, like,
that's right. No, it's doctor up. That's right.
Substantial. Oh man. And what a way to, I think, transition. You both kind of hit a transitional season, I felt like, around a similar time, right?
Correct.
From leading a church and leading in the Foursquare leadership space for a long time, and the Lord shifting you, like you mentioned, out of that senior leadership role at the church and in that space of leadership with Foursquare. And Tami, and you didn't take that as like okay, now it's time to coast into I mean, like, if anything, to the point of getting, your PhD and different things, like, you guys have said, like, no, let's turn up the gas a little bit. God's not even close to done. There's so much more that he has for us. And it's this new book that you're really writing with him. It's so inspiring, man. It's so encouraging, because you see that's possible. Right. And I wish more people could just get the window. When I spent time with you, when you spent time with our team several years, 4 years ago, probably now.
Yeah, it was.
It was before COVID really kind of did its thing. the undeniable sense of joy, purpose, fulfillment, satisfaction, anticipation of what could be, as well as what presently you were enjoying in this role that you had been stepping into with coaching and all of that stuff. I was like, this is not common. I don't see a lot of men that are rounding out their years as a senior pastor, stepping into something new, transitioning well, and them being like probably more excited than ever to be stepping into the fullness of who God's called them to be. So will you just give the listeners and those that are watching that part of that journey of like, okay, there's more. I'm transitioning out of leading a church and pastoring like this. Something stirring up that whole call back into the marketplace kind of thing. Take us on that journey for a bit.
Oh, absolutely. Part of it started with, as you're talking about, my partner in life, my wife, Tami, gratefully been married for over 44 years now, but we have done things together. Somehow in the early days, we just kept things simple. We communicate, we talk. We don't make a decision apart from really hearing from the Lord and both of us saying that's the way we believe God's talking to us. So it's kind of funny. We're really egalitarian in our approach. In other words, Jesus is the Lord of our home. And Tami doesn't lead all the time. I don't lead all the time. We really believe the Lord leads us. And both of us, we've always asked this question: what needs to be done? Which of us is available? Which of us is best suited to do what needs to be done? And we always just go about things prayerfully. We just kept things very simple. But I think this season, Chase, to me is very intentional because years ago, Tami did a research for a master's paper talking about this doctoral journey. And one of the things she studied was people in ministry. And what she saw was the reason a lot of ministers don't let go of the pulpit is because they haven't prepared financially. Their identity is wrapped up in their role, right?
Yeah, right.
And they are what they do. And seeing some of that research that she came up with, when I heard it, I knew in my heart, I don't want to be a person that hangs on. I'm a bit of a hippie. I think I really am. I'd be a good hippie because I can't do ministry for money because I need money.
Yeah.
It's a conflict in my heart, in my head, in my spirit. I just can't do that. And so I was looking at what can I really give myself to, because I love the younger generation. I love what God's doing. When you see scripture, God is reaching the next generation. And guess what? The next generation is different than my generation.
Right.
So what God is doing there, I don't need to be the person to try to steward that. The next generation needs to steward that. And I need to celebrate and cheer on the next generation as they're doing that. Tami and I have that philosophy. But it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Go ahead.
Can I pause you there for a second? Just because I love that. And I think people will see it. Was that, when I think about, do you guys feel like that was always there for you? Or was there a pivot point where you realized, okay, something needs to shift in the way I'm seeing this and thinking about this in order to move from where I am to where you are now in that space? Or has that always kind of been a part of your guys' kind of like posture?
Yeah, I think I would say philosophically it's always been our posture, but then realistically, when I'm pastoring, the last church was Lighthouse Church in Thousand Oaks, California, and we had this young man come on staff with us. I really felt like he was the next guy, and I was processing with the district. Could that be a possibility? But what I saw was something I'd never seen. Now let me pause there for just a second.
Yeah.
Tami and I have always done everything young. It seemed we got married young. We started ministry young. We got ministry assignments young. Everything was just young. And now there's this transition, all this stuff here. There's this transition, and it was like what I saw in the young, I saw on him, Kevin Lewis, what I saw on Kevin was a heart for the people in the Conejo Valley like I had. I saw a commitment that he and Kaylee made to move to our area without knowing exactly how it was going to work out, but knew God had called them. I recognize that.
Yeah.
We did that.
Yeah.
But I also saw who he was and where he was in life. I felt like he was going to have more influence and reach this generation more effectively than I could, because they needed to see someone their age loving Jesus,
Yeah.
right? I think they expect the older people too, because we're about to die. So it's like, we got to get into heaven. So we got to love God, right? You got to love God. You got to get to heaven. But there was that real shift. There really was a shift. I haven't really thought about it that way too. You just asked me that question. What I saw was, we're not doing the young thing that we've always done. Now it's our turn to step back, applaud, and cheer. It's not get out of the way, but don't be in the way.
That's so good. That's so good. Part of what the question came from is I recognize there's across the landscape, right? This is in the marketplace and then definitely in the ministry space, but we're seeing probably the largest leadership transition across the landscape, probably historically ever, when it comes to Gen X is getting to their top end, and the boomers are that have been there, and the boomer generation, how massive it was, and then how small Gen X was. There's this leadership gap. Now the millennial, generation stepping into different levels of some of the, like, I don't know how old the new lead pastor you just mentioned is, that's come in, that took over where you
31, 32.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm right there. I'm 32, millennial generation, but there's a gap that's we're seeing that transition. And I think part of what I'm recognizing with older leaders that have been there and done that for a long time is that recognition of they recognize when that moment starts to come, like, okay, I think I know my time is done here, or I need to transition out, that it's a muscle that's extremely underdeveloped to be able to see what you just talked about and go, I'm okay with this. And not only am I okay with this, but I want to be intentionally not getting in the way, like you just acknowledged. And I wish a larger audience of older leaders would be honest with themselves in that conversation and be open to growing there. Because I think part of what we're seeing, I'll get quick here and I want to move into the other stuff, but I think I see it in you guys. You guys did it so well, and I want to honor it. But I wish that more leaders would see that and go, we don't have to, end where we are and then just begrudgingly hand it off to the young and then go start a new thing with the same group that we really resonate with, while they're trying to. We can actually stay, not just be booted out, but we can come around and support and champion as we are kind of finishing this last leg of our race, while pouring into the men and women that are coming into that seat. It's hard, easier said than done. I know there's a lot of complicated layers to that, but I think it starts with that posture, that heart posture. And agreed. I wish more leaders would take an honest look at that and go, Lord, help me with that, because we need it. The younger generation needs it more than ever.
Well, Chase, let me say this to you, because I think a real key to that is having a clue as what you want to give yourself to.
Good.
And part of what I've studied in my PhD in human development was the stages of development. And what I found out is the social sciences are making God look brilliant. I mean, what they're discovering about his creations is just fascinating. The idea of aging, the idea of getting older, is having capacity around the things that you're passionate about, right? And that's quite a conversation. That's really a coaching conversation to help people really identify what that is. But when people ask me, said, how did you do that? How did you give up the pulpit? The one thing I still miss today, is when you're speaking and you're preparing. And by the way, these are God's people. They're not my people, right?
Right.
And you feel his heart for his people through you.
Yeah.
I miss that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But I'm grateful for all the years that I had that. The occasional times I speak, it's still there, but my identity's not in that.
Yeah.
I found the thing that pastoring thing, how can I pastor? And for me, I just gained some skills of coaching and am just translating that. And the good thing is I prepared myself to where I'm hireable by these organizations that's planning on paying people well.
Right.
So,
Right. We'll have to.
so a full week for me is like, I mean, a full week might be 18 hours, you know?
Right. Well, I definitely have some.
Sorry.
No, I definitely have some questions about that because I think that's another really untalked about thing when it comes to ministry in the transitional space. I'll come back to that, but before I do, so for people just to give them a little bit more of that, like what you're doing in the coaching space, and as we jump into that, what I guess I'll do is I'll give them a little bit of that moment where we had that interaction that really led to the beginning of our relationship and that impact. And you came in, so our lead pastor, Jonathan Kobler, they brought you guys in, from those connections and relationships, Foursquare, et cetera, over those years, but recognizing what you had been doing in addition to continuing to lead the church and start that transition plan. You had begun this coaching journey, and the program at that time that you had pressed into, I don't know if it's still part of the world. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
The Berkman, you're talking about the Berkman? Yeah. It's a big deal.
So I mean, at that time, here I've been a part of a couple church ministry teams. There always just feels like there's a new something out there when it comes to team development, leadership development, et cetera, to try to help everybody understand who they are and work together more effectively. All those things are good. I've done some great things. And then there's the whole personality trait stuff that's been there for years, but more recently, Enneagram, all of those different things that are there, DISC, some Myers-Briggs, all that stuff. So right. You came in and you're like, hey, there's this thing called the Berkman. And my initial response was like, all right, man, another whole another one. Oh, maybe I just feel like I barely grasp any of those. And so my initial posture was like, all right, I don't know this guy very well. I respect him from the positions that I know that they've been in, and trust Pastor John and Fawn, but I didn't know. And I just figured I'd have to go through a whole other training of learning the program and the language. I did not expect it to do what it did as quickly as it did, as differently as it did than all of the other kind of things. It was just different. Right. And a lot of that was the way you led us and engaged with us. I mean, it was special. Like it was clear that like you were, you believed it. It was embodied in who you were. Sure. It wasn't just information you were trying to translate to others. It was in you. And it created this conversation for me, in addition to the team, that opened some things up for me that honestly was the beginning shift for where I am sitting today.
Awesome.
Having a podcast that I started and am still continue. I mentioned this before we started recording. I'm a great starter, a terrible finisher. The fact that I'm sitting here with you 43 episodes in, as I said at the beginning of the year, I'll do 52 and praise the Lord. But that's a big, was this, I go back to that moment where you came, and it was, I think, your second time with us. We were in the sanctuary all together as a church staff. And I don't even remember specifically the exercise, but the gist of it was you were really helping us see some of this identity piece that was bigger than just what we did, our role, et cetera. And I think you asked us to like come up with a word or two words or something like that to like describe like who we were, something like that. Right. You'll have to refresh me there. But bottom line, I remember being in that moment and I felt like the Lord put the two words on my heart, and I was so afraid to say it because for me, it was this tension between being in ministry for so long and my journey of overcoming people pleasing, not wanting to disappoint others and their expectations of me, et cetera. And feeling like if I ever really attempted to step out of the box or bounds of what ministry was supposed to look like, that I would be looked at as somebody who was just trying to pursue things for me or make my name great or not being committed enough to the role of the church. And so there was this weird, I just felt like I was bound by by other people's opinions, and I didn't want to let them down. And yet inside of me was this like, I've got more. I feel like God is saying he wants to use me for and do in me. And it got me excited and full of joy to be able to think about things outside of the four walls of the church, in addition to my call and assignment. Right. And so the words that I shared as we were all going around sharing, the words that God kind of inscribed in my heart was boundless influence. Those were the words. Shared that. And the idea was, man, I think God's saying he's called me to have boundless influence. There's no parameters around how he can use me to influence people both in and out of the church. And that conversation we had following, we had like a little, what's it called? Sample size appetizer coaching moment, one-on-one, where I got to talk about that with you. And that was where I think the light really started to turn on towards, man, you can actually step into this more than you realize that you can. So that was a part of the coaching experience, presentation experience through Berkman, et cetera, that really started and launched us into where I feel like I am in our relationship and how the impact is there. But like, it was different. This whole Berkman thing, like I mean, I know you can't explain all that for people on the conversation here, but what does that coaching world look like for you over the last 2, 3, 4 years? That people what is it? Why is it different? What are you doing with that?
There's more to us than we know. God's created, I'm going to use the word complexity. That's good. It's a good thing. I'm not saying you're complex. I'm saying there's complexity of mind that we have the ability to expand and continue to grow. Just because we're full-grown adults in height doesn't mean the only way to grow is out. Right?
So good.
We can grow developmentally. And to be honest, that's what is not addressed a lot. We keep trying to inspire people all the time. Inspiration's okay. But it's not growth. It's not really growth. You got to get those words. You got to get that boundless word, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? It's like, and for me to believe is that, would that be true about me? I can always tell when somebody is really opening to what the Holy Spirit is saying, what God would be saying to them, because typically there's a little anxiety, but that's how our brains, I spent a year in neuroscience, and it's just fascinating to see what's known about our brain. Our brain wants to rely on what it has known. But God's leading us into the unknown. That's where coaching comes in.
Right.
Because you need to have that fast friend that'll walk with you as you start moving forward into doing these type of things, right? But the Berkman pulls up some of that unknown to us that's very true about us, and pulls it out to create a conversation. That's what I love about that particular assessment tool. And there's nothing quite like it. It really measures people's social desirability.
Yeah.
And we're made for relationships. So it just kind of pulls it all together.
Yeah. And that, I mean, to see that what I just described about the kind of the personal revelation and impact for me, I mean, to see that happen in a similar way for a group of about 25, 30 people. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I was like, it wasn't just like, I wasn't just the one drinking the Kool-Aid. It was like, it was evident, like what was happening in that process as we were walking us through as a team over those sessions was authentic and impactful across the board. And I think for a lot of people, there's a hesitation, right? Like I mentioned in the beginning too, that there's all these programs, there's all these systems. I think sometimes people feel overwhelmed with how much they don't know about who they are and how much is out there trying to tell them who they are. And so they're trying to figure out what is the right, place to go. And I think to come back to what you came in and said, that's where coaching, I could not agree more and advocate more for that step. And I think it's something about, you could get the YouTube, whatever, or there's something about a person who's invested to walk with you on that journey that has the ability to see in front of you that maybe where you can't, and pull you into that space in a way that, is growth oriented.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people go, either they tell themselves, I don't have the time, or I don't have the finances, or I don't have the whatever to really figure out how to make that happen. Maybe they feel like they shouldn't need it. Like, I'm a lead pastor, I'm a coach, so I don't need it. I mean, and the reality is that's false.
It's true.
Everybody needs that kind of, I think, could benefit from that space. But on a real practical level, like when it comes to coaching, when it comes to how you've turned that piece of what God's lit up in you and revealed to you more clearly about who He's called you to be. How have you turned that into something that is now literally what you're doing with your full time, and it's just continuing to expand? Like, how did you go from this is passionate in my heart to like, okay, practically this is now going to be my career and business of impact moving forward? Because that's something else I think that is where a lot of
Right.
people find themselves. How do I cross that bridge?
Boy, I wish I could say I was smart enough to figure it out. But I think, like so many of us, that we stumble into some things and don't realize that we enjoy this type of an application or this type of a focus. We didn't know that we would like this until we tried it.
Sure.
Um, and again, the Burton was what got me into it, because I was given the assessment and I was really intrigued with it. Now, the Enneagram's great. I think it's the best personality assessment out there. I think the Enneagram is. The Berkman's more about a personal reality. So it's more, you can kind of look through the lens of what makes sense to a person.
Yeah.
And so when I saw it, I thought, oh, I'm really curious about that. So I thought, I'll see if I can add this tool to my life. And it got me into coaching. I didn't know that's where I was headed. I didn't know that's what was going on. But then pretty soon I started finding out, oh, this is coaching. Oh, I like this. This is a lot of fun. And then when I'm coaching people, some of their responses, and to be candid with you, Chase, what I started seeing was what God needs from us as vessels to contribute to the work He's doing in the hearts of others. He doesn't need our personality. He really needs our presence. To be present.
Yeah.
With somebody.
Yeah.
Because when somebody feels somebody with them, man, I think this withness thing that God created in the garden, turns out that's a powerful thing too, right?
Yeah.
There's such rich truths that people can explore when they feel like they're not alone. Jesus, look how many questions Jesus asked. The Holy Spirit He leads you into answers, right? It's not so much that we discover so much of that. That's what coaching is. It's a process of discovery.
Yeah.
And coming to realize, oh, okay. And I could maybe, and so when I looked into it, on the Enneagram, I'm a 4 with a strong 5 wing, and the 5 wing likes to rely on expertise. So I'm doing the research to find out about all this kind of stuff. And when I started researching it, I thought I would write this material. So I need to investigate it. So I started sticking my toe into it while I was still pastoring. With permission, I went through counsel, just told them, because I didn't want anybody to feel like I was trying to quit or anything.
Yeah.
But I was just really, I was discovering and identifying. I honestly think people, by the time you're 40, you need to start having 2 or 3 things that you think you need to explore to prepare yourself so that when you're ready, and when God's season is through with that lead pastoring stuff, that you can live a life-giving, vibrant life and not be the lead pastor somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. The question that I not only do I feel, because I have been in the ministry space for so long, but I hear in those circles, it is the just the whole world around money that is pretty untalked about as well. It's like one of those, like, I don't know, I have the questions, but I don't know if they're okay to ask. I don't know where to go when it comes to that space or whatever. And because of the ministry world, where, like you mentioned earlier, like we're not doing this or in this for money or monetary gain. But when it comes to the thought of shifting into a marketplace mentality, the heart doesn't shift there, right? But the reality of like, that's a completely different world.
Correct.
And but I've recognized one of the hesitancies in my own world when I think about that space is how to gear shift. How do I shift from the fact that like if I were to do something in that space, or other people are stepping into coaching executive teams or whatever else for Fortune 500 companies or government agencies or universities, right? That space, like you earlier alluded to, like they're prepared to pay well. Like,
Yeah, they are.
how did you shift even into that? Like, I know what I'm worth in that space. I know what I'm worth. I know what my value, what I'm bringing to the table here is, and that's actually okay to communicate and to expect. I just don't hear a lot of people talking about this space, and I know that especially in my generation, it's got a lot of questions around it, and go like, what's okay, what's not okay. But how have you navigated that, and what would maybe be something you would encourage somebody, whether they're in your season of beginning to transition or actually transition out of a place where they've been for a long time in ministry, or they're somebody in maybe my season where I've got passions and things that are stirred in addition to the ministry space, but not always knowing how to gauge that. I don't know if I'm even really making sense, but I just know I've been a part of lots of conversations with people that are like, I don't even know how to talk about this. It feels weird. It feels awkward. I don't really even know why, but I know that's a healthier way forward. How have you navigated that?
I think it's a fantastic conversation with some complexity because, of course, while you're pastoring, you got to have a focus there. But I'm going to say you also have to prepare yourself. So many people in ministry are creatives, and creatives need variety.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have variety and you just have to do one thing, you're going to probably lose that person.
Yeah. Right.
Because they need variety, and variety in what becomes part of the coaching conversation, and then how to prioritize that in this season of your life, right? It just starts kind of breaking it down, but the acknowledgement of that and realizing that can really soothe a lot of things in your soul to be able to realize that. Let me give you the speech that I did, because what I realized was where I wanted to go in the marketplace, I needed to find out what their language was. And a lot of them, their language is either certifications, education. And I'll never forget the day when I was being dropped into a conflict of an organization where the general manager, his executive assistant, and HR director were suing each other. And so they had heard about the Berkman, and so they asked would I be willing to work with these people. And I'm a pastor. Yeah, I'll run to that, right?
Yeah.
I don't go there with my reverend shirt on, right? I don't have reverend on anything. I go there because they're people and I love people. But I'm getting there and I'm having to negotiate the contract, which was new territory, with the lawyer. And when he saw PhD candidate, he said, "Oh, we're good. He said, PhD, we're good." The greatest feeling of satisfaction came over me because that was the intent, because I had learned the language of the people that I wanted to work with who have developmental budgets.
Yep.
They plan on investing. They plan on investing in their employees. They're intentionally going to do that. So in order to qualify that, I mean, the PhD might be a little bit, I don't know that you have to get a PhD, but certifications and stuff, at least a master's degree and certifications, when you get that, then that's the language. But here's what I determined to do with this nonprofit heart of mine, for-profit and nonprofit both, is that I'm giving 60% of my time to the organizations that have developmental budgets, because they're going to pay me like an example is the least I make is $150 an hour, 150. That's the least I make with those organizations.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'd give 60% of my time to them so that I can give 40% of my time to nonprofit, individual, startups, and I don't care about the money.
Right.
In other words, I don't need them to pay me. What I do talk to them about is they need to value their growth, and they need to put a dollar amount on that. But I don't have to require a certain amount because I'm getting my money from the other side.
Yeah, it's really good. That's really, really cool too. I think that's I think that helps the conversation. I think that mentality really helps the conversation across the board as well, and gives people even some form of like an example of a target. Man, if I could be in that kind of space one day,
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I just know I wish that there was. I wish there were more conversations around this space, because I think a lot of people stay in the dark on ideas or um, things that are stirring up in them, because there's this concern of, I don't hear people talking about it, and so I don't want to be the one that's risking talking about it, and then people then going, well, what are you trying to, are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to do this more than, and I think that's um, part of my own personal journey. But I know that it's not just me, because I've actually had lots of conversations with people that have had similar feelings and thoughts. And so you were a person that I found myself feeling really safe with, who had the context and the history of both of those worlds to go,
Yeah.
man, this is something that I think is exciting to talk about from a lens of like somebody being like, yeah, why not? What do you,
Right.
what's holding you back here?
Right.
And that was really, really encouraging to me. So for people that are like, man, coaching Berkman, whether they're, they're some form of a leader in their organization or on their team, and they're going, my team's dysfunctional in this way. And I mean, the thought of having somebody be able to come and assess a little bit of that, give us some coaching or some direction, is extremely appealing. And then I need to figure out how to make that happen, or personal kind of coaching, whatever. What's the direction that you would say you would encourage people to go, whether it's connecting to you or some next steps? Because I know you're busy, I know your schedule is full, and I know you've got certain metrics of things that you've got to have people walk through, but what would you encourage people to consider as some next steps if there's some interest there in what you're talking about today?
I would really encourage a conversation. Sincerely. I mean, because they need to figure out, what do they want? What are they looking at? Where is their team at? Right. Or where are they at? And a lot of times people are trying to figure out way out there. Well, let's find out first where you are. We can talk about where you want to go. Because then when we see those two pieces, then we can start building a map, if you would, on how to do that. But my point is, are you ready for the conversation?
Yeah.
Because all these assessments, all they do is they create a conversation, and they're measuring certain aspects of the human person for the purpose of a conversation.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that is the most fun. I really use those things as frameworks. And when they're true, when there's truth to what they're saying, that's good, but we don't need to prove the Berkman right. What we need to do is have the conversations to know how to get people aligned, get their passion and their purpose lined up, right?
Yeah.
Get people lined up with working in areas that they're passionate. Berkman found this in their research, that if 65% of the things that motivate you are in your job description, you'll never work another day in your life. I mean, think about it. Think about it from God's perspective, that if we actually do work in the areas that we're motivated by, passion and purpose, what it doesn't measure, by the way, is skill. So if you don't have skill in those things you're passionate about, use your passion to get the skill so that other people are happy that you're working in it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a legitimate, it's a legitimate issue. I know at times. So part of this, as we kind of come to the wrap up here, for me, is that conversation, that moment with the whole group that we had 4 or 5 years ago, and then the follow-up coaching moment we had together to talk about and unpack that boundless influence moment for me was a significant start to my freed up to build up journey, right? Like the whole podcast, the why of this thing is to help people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be. That was something that I recognized had been holding me back for a long time. And you put language to it, and I think gave me the beginning of that crack in the door to go, hey, the door's actually open here, for me to start that, like, oh man, I could get freed up from this. And so that's significant to my life in this conversation. But before we go, would you be willing to just share too, maybe in your journey, something in your past or even present that you would say, you've been freed up from, so you could be who you were made to be, or you overcome something that you were held back by, you got freed
Yeah.
up from to be who you're made to be, that you'd be able to and willing to share with the audience.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity for that too, because I think there are a lot of things. I mean, when you live, 60 plus years, and 64 is of this last week, 64 years.
Let's go.
I mean,
Happy
you've had a
birthday.
lot of breakthroughs,
Yeah.
or I should say, I've had a lot of breakthroughs, but I'm actually living one right now. And you recognize maybe the change in my body and the
Yeah.
turkey neck. You didn't call the turkey neck out, but the point is, like, years ago, I decided I wanted to get fit. But getting fit, it wasn't clear enough. And I ended up losing some weight and doing some stuff. But here's what I noticed. I was wanting to get fit, so I added some things to my life. Nutrition, movement. I added them to my life. All this coaching and all this learning that I've done, I actually have applied it this last year. And about 3 months ago, it just went, the lights came on. And I think the Holy Spirit just helped me understand. Oh, I added something to my life. So when I accomplished the weight goal, it was over. When I understood that, it wasn't about weight loss. I realized, oh no, it's not getting fit for me. It's living healthy. And this would take longer than we have. I just have this conviction that now that God's given me this physical body, and I need to resource it in a way that it can thrive.
Yeah.
Of course, there's weight loss with that and that kind of stuff, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
And so my new mantra that is just clear, is so clear to me. I'm so motivated. I've had 22 days in a row of closing my rings on my, walking over 10,000 steps. I'm eating super healthy. Lost 40 pounds. Wow. But let me tell you the biggest thing. I cannot tell you how good I feel.
Yeah.
And there's no conflict this time, because I didn't add something to my life. I changed my life.
Yeah.
And how I changed my life was right up here.
Yeah.
I mean, asking God, praying, but what I came to, and this is might seem, I haven't tested it on anybody else. We'll find out this is cheesy. But the word live healthy, those two words, live healthy, they're just inspiring to me.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm a baby boomer. I'm almost not a baby boomer, but I'm in that age group. So I got to do an acronym, right? Yeah. Yes. So to me, the live is this. Yeah. Love deeply. Innovate consistently. That's the creative thing. Be innovative. Innovation, creativity you can do by yourself. Innovation involves other people. Yeah, it's good. Right. Value movement and eat healthy. That's what live means for me, that I am living. And it just feels like my life is just like better than it's ever been, honestly. Yeah. Physically, in my soul, in my spirit, and gratefully with Tami. So a real breakthrough mentally, to get past all that stuff. That would be another story. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I appreciate you sharing the snapshot of that too. I know that when it comes to that world, which part of what I'm hearing coming out of you is it's a holistic health. Big time. Right. It isn't like, and that to me, I think, is the most inspiring and exciting thing that people long for more than they realize. It is part of how health begets health, discipline begets discipline, kind of thing. You start to see it infiltrate into all of those spaces. Now, all of a sudden, you're a more effective coach than ever before, a healthier, more joy-filled husband than ever before, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And so that's so awesome, man. I'm well done. And also love that mantra, love that word,
that you really feel like the Lord gave you there. And I think that that's going to be a living testament. And when I think about the next phase of, Gary Dunahoo's impact in the world, can see that being a very large part of that. Right. So, so awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time today. Thanks for sharing a part of your heart, your life with us. And, I'm going to put in the show notes, for ways that people can get in touch with you, follow up maybe on what coaching could look like, that whole process. I'll make sure that that's all in there. But is there just for the listeners that maybe they're driving, they don't have the ability to do that and they want to check it up later, is there a specific website that you can even verbalize right now that people can go to connect with you?
GaryDunahoo.com.
There you go.
So if you can spell Dunahoo, Dunahoo, GaryDunahoo.com, that you'll find out everything you need to know.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll include all that in the show notes there. Dr. Gary, thank you for your time. Please give my love to Tami as well. And man, what a privilege to have you here. And thanks for the way you're allowing the Lord to use your life in this season to make a difference in people's lives all around the world. It's been a big impact on my life. And I know really it's just started. So appreciate you taking the time today. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. It's a joy to actually be part of the fruit of the seed that popped up a few years ago. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Well, for everybody listening, watching, thank you for joining us today. Until next time, see you later.